Hello and welcome to CounterTack. My name is Wade Lance. I'm the Director of Deployment Engineering, and we appreciate this opportunity to show you what we've been working on. CounterTack, Scout, and Sentinel products represent a fundamental shift forward in endpoint security. Our revolutionary endpoint security system gives us the ability to detect malicious behavior, collect information about what happens on those systems as it happens, and analyze that information for you in real time. The way that we're solving this problem is by adding a new kind of intelligence into the security landscape. You know, if we're honest, most of what we understand about how our networks and systems are coming under attack is based in network-based tools and systems. One of the issues that we face today is that the threat has really modified over the last few years. You hear terms like advanced persistent threat, targeted attacks, and what these really mean is that the attackers and attack community have become very intelligent about how they probe and penetrate into network systems. Current methodologies and tools really lack the architecture to be able to demonstrate and display this information. Dwell time is a serious issue for security teams today. As these attacks persist for long periods of time in the network space, there's loss of intellectual property and other data, but there's also simply the amount of work it takes to clean up the mess. If we can detect an attack as it happens, gather the data, collect the data off of the systems as it happens, and analyze that information, feeding it directly into the security teams, they're able to remediate the problem as it happens and eliminate the total cleanup, saving security teams substantive amounts of time. One of the things we see over and over again is that malware or a malicious user, once on the system, simply disable host antivirus or host intrusion detection systems. And that really is a twofold problem. Number one, that gives them the freedom to operate in the host operating system, stealing data, modifying the system, and really to wreak havoc as they intend. But then also, at this point, security teams are completely blind as to what's happening in the system. CounterTack products, Scout and Sentinel. The Scout product is a tactical monitoring solution. Single blade appliance gathers information from dozens or a couple of hundred endpoints and analyzes that in real time. The Sentinel solution is an enterprise class monitoring tool that allows you to gather intelligence from thousands of endpoints concurrently, and not just to get a sense of attacks as they play out on particular endpoints, but also to correlate that information across the broad network. How are other technologies in the network struggling? Where are penetrations happening? And where best to deploy your resources. The CounterTack agent really represents a revolutionary step forward in endpoint monitoring, and there's really two reasons for that. Number one is its stealth capability. Because the agent installs itself in the kernel and becomes a component of the operating system, it's very, very hard to detect that it's operating in the system. And the reason that that's important is that our experience has shown us that attackers are very aware of the environment that they're in. If the attacker or malware can identify the tools that are being used to monitor them, they behave differently. One of the great things about the Sentinel cluster is that this cloud-based technology, if you will, all operates on your network. None of the security information from your systems is being sent off network to a public cloud. With Sentinel, you have a private cloud infrastructure that analyzes all the security information off of your endpoints and feeds that data into other systems. This allows security operators to monitor every point in the network without concern about sufficient back-end capacity to do the analysis. It's load balanced, fault tolerant, and able to expand as needed as your network grows. So as we've discussed, CounterTack, Scout, and Sentinel allow you to respond to next-generation threats with next-generation tools. Let's take a look at the technology now. The monitor view that we're looking at now is a situational awareness view that gives us a sense of what systems have come under attack, from what sources, and how successful those interactions have been. Systems that have come under attack appear in white nomenclature around the periphery, and those interactions appear as these colored spines around this portion of the view. These colored spines around the periphery give us a real sense of the success or failure of different interactions. Here we can see an interaction. The first piece of information to look at is the origin condition. The origin condition is the original behavior that caused the system to begin to collect data about this interaction. The second piece of information is this impact score. Impact of 5 so far. Does attack will build over time if it continues. Impact scores go from 1 to 100, 100 being the most successful interaction against the system. And this impact score of 5 gives us a pretty good indication that this interaction isn't really going very far. The next thing that we'll look at is another interaction. You can see here the colored spine moves from gray to white and then red. And that long spine indicates that this interaction has carried on. But that impact score of 98 tells us that after this event, more and more events begin to happen. So things like processes spawning new processes, processes writing to the registry, processes creating and editing files, opening socket connections. These kinds of behaviors are indicative of malicious use of the system. The Analyze view allows us to dig into interactions against particular hosts at a great level of detail. The attack that we're looking at right now, this attack 93, began when a service opened a thread and the backing file for that thread lived in a user-controlled subdirectory. The total behavior in this interaction is displayed here in the sequencer. These are events versus time. We can see that this interaction so far has gone out about 4 minutes. If it continues, we'll see additional events as they occur. That total behavior is then broken into file, process, and network events. The origin condition, the beginning of this behavior, is shown here in red, and key events are displayed in orange. So we can see that what begins as a process operating on the system ends up at this point as outbound socket connections. Down at the bottom of the screen, we see 437 events so far in this interaction, and there's extensive information available. You can scroll through this and see every instance of inter-process communication, processes spawning new processes, every instance of a memory map injection where a process writes into memory, and all that data is saved by the CounterTack agent and sent off to the analysis system. The great thing about CounterTack technologies is this ability to analyze that behavior. Let's change the render mode from all events to classifications. And what we see here is that the system can classify several different kinds of behavior in the system. At this point, the 1 minute and 48 second mark, the system has determined that this behavior is indicative of a Trojan methodology. The way that these executables are modifying the registry, writing out files, and interacting with the system is indicative of a Trojan being installed on the system. One more thing we want to show you in the system is the ability to look at the results on the system. If I select the results drop down, I can look through a different list of outcomes, one of which is interactive sessions. I can see that at the 1 second point into this interaction, there is an interactive session. By selecting this event and then view shell, the system shows me this command prompt session as it played out keystroke for keystroke. Now in this case, the Dark Soul malware is simply looking to find out if a couple of different antivirus systems are running on this host so that it can shut them off. They're not running, so the system moves on. But this level of view into keystroke by keystroke replay of sessions is very helpful for analysts trying to understand exactly what happened on this host when the malware or attacker had control of it. Another common tool that analysts will use on these interactions is the view report capability. By selecting view report, the system produces a simple report that you can use to show management exactly what happened. This is that attack 92. You can see here the impact of 99 out of 100, almost 2,100 events. We can see some basic information about the endpoint, some information about the analysis profile that was triggered, again, suspicious executable being investigated, and then some of the information about the origin event that triggered this analysis. Of note here in particular are the classifications. The system shows that in addition to 1,680 key events, one interactive session, the classification engine has identified this APT dark soul working on the system. As you've seen today, our ability to detect, collect, and analyze security information as it happens on the network really is a revolutionary change in endpoint security. Thank you.